When I was younger, I wanted to hike from the base of the Appalachians all the way to the top, from Alabama to Canada. I wanted to live in the mountains the entire time, carrying everything with me, only stopping in towns if it was absolutely necessary. I wanted to overcome that part of nature. I wanted to prove that I was able to do it, even if hiking a mountain isn't necessarily indicative of being able to do something in most of our modern society. I still want to hike it, maybe not all of it at this point, but that want is still there. In media, mountains can come in many forms. In landscape paintings, they're the centerpiece of the picture. They define the skyline and dominate the view. But oftentimes, the viewer, the audience, is placed on another mountain. They're taking the view of this titan of nature, but by placing you on top of another one, you feel like you're equals with it when you're looking at it. In books, they can act as tests of skills, like Smaug's Cavern for Bilbo, or moments of despair, like the Mines of Moria. In movies, they can be antagonists, like any movie about Mount Everest is about someone fighting the mountain. Or they can be where the MacGuffin is stored, where the ancient orders live, or whatever, if any movie mentions Shangri-La. Even our history is filled with mountains that shape how we remember things. Was the Donner Party victims of an antagonistic mountain? Or were they refusing help from the people that called it home? Would we remember Hannibal as well as we do if he didn't cross the Alps with his elephants? Would pop culture be the same without the hot gates in the Battle of Thermopylae? And games have also used mountains, both as set pieces and goals for their players to experience. And they try to tap into that primal need for us to overcome. I really began noticing how important mountains were as a set piece while playing Wandersong. I was really into Wandersong at the time because of its story. It was uplifting, it was cute, and it was the type of story I haven't played in a while, and it made me fall in love with video games all over again. And what really cemented that feeling for me was while I was going through one of the chapters where you just climb a mountain. And as I was progressing through the chapter, I realized that mountains were in a lot of games that I hold really dear. And there are a few ways that they're usually used. The first kind of way that I normally see was like how Wandersong used mountains. It was a final test, a show of how powerful the character had become, or how strong their beliefs could make them. Oftentimes, it would reinforce the message of the game, or highlight all of the mechanics that you have mastered at this point. Wandersong used it to show how being kind to people allows you to do so much more than you can do on your own. And it does this by mirroring how you start the game alone. And it's not until you make friends that you start doing things that you were deemed incapable of doing. Fury, another game that I really like a lot, uses it to remind you how powerful you are. It uses the idea of the mountain and the aesthetic of that final level as this is the peak, but you are so far above it. And it's one of the moments, not the only one, but it's the most strong for me, that reminds you that you're terrifying to everyone on that planet. And they would do anything to just keep you in your prison. And it hits hard. Pyre uses it to symbolize the climb up to the surface, that each of the characters, their entire arc is based around that. They want to make it to that surface, and how better to send people to a higher plane than on a mountain. And on these mountains are usually challenges, like in Guacamelee, where it requires the use of all of your abilities to be able to even get to it, let alone get to the end to fight Kalaka, or Kalasa. I suck at pronouncing them. Mountains are really powerful to show you how far you have come, but they also can be used as a starting point. The second kind of mountains that I see are beginnings. Mountains are often seen as bastions of nature, untouched by man, and are generally seen as very peaceful. They isolate areas, and it makes it perfect to teach players how the game works. It gives them an area that's protected both from the enemies and from themselves. They allow the player to explore all of their abilities before they finally reach the antagonist for the first time. Breath of the Wild uses its plateau to teach you how to play the game and use all of its mechanics before even allowing you to possibly go anywhere else. It's a microcosm of the game. Hyperlight Drifter, and at least how I've been told to play it, you start the game by going northward, towards the mountain. That area teaches you all of the little things that happen in the game. It has some wonderful environmental storytelling that is easier to find, and it teaches you how to look for secrets, how to look out for environmental traps, and how to start managing fighting enemies. And in that area, you learn how to play the game before you start learning how to use the upgrades, unlike in other areas where the upgrades become much more prevalent in usage. And in my opinion at least, Kerbal Space Program uses its mountains in the same way. I don't necessarily have to go there, but I always find myself in each game, or at least playthrough I do, making a plane that I use to fly through the mountains to the, I think it's the west of the station? Station? Is that the term? I don't know. But I always find myself flying to it, because it's how I test out and practice ships that I'm going to transition, once I get them higher up, into a stable orbit. It's where I practice that lateral movement, and so for me, those mountains have always been where I begin the game. The final type of mountain is a little more niche. it's not just using it as a starting point or an end point. It's not even just a midpoint. The types of games that use the mountain in this way are often set entirely on the mountain. Sometimes the only way to tell a story about overcoming insurmountable obstacles is to make the game about overcoming what to us is the closest thing we can find in nature. Mountains are treacherous and difficult and uncaring, and they test anyone who tries to even pass through them. And so you can tell a very powerful inward story by using it as a metaphor. Celeste and Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy are two games that I hold very, very close to my heart, despite the fact that I'm not actually that good at either of them. But both of them explore how mountains don't need to be physical obstacles, but they can represent psychological and emotional obstacles. And it's incredibly powerful for someone who has had a history of those kinds of obstacles. And I'll probably touch upon those later, but that's what makes Celeste and Getting Over It so important to me. And perhaps it's because mountains symbolize these journeys that I feel compelled to go climb a mountain myself. Or perhaps the reason they're in games is just a product of some societal influence that has somehow managed to survive this long. Whatever the reason, whenever I pick up a new game, I know that when I start, I'm always going to be on the lookout for that distant